Come on, YouTube, catch up. Catch up. All right. Good evening, folks. It's another Tuesday live stream in the. I think not the last one for September because we get one more, but we're getting close. Before I get into the slightly heavier stuff, warning: this might get a little emotional. I just want to talk about a couple things. We'll let folks show up and notifications. You know, YouTube doing its stupid algorithm thing. So last night, man, it's been kind of a roller coaster weekend. So time is not syncing up properly in my brain. Last night, I actually went on the Aquarium Guys podcast. I'm not sure when that will go live, but if you guys watch them, that will, or I guess listen to them is more accurate, right? Because it's a podcast. It's not a live stream. That'll go up. We talked about something that's kind of near and dear to my heart in the sense of how I think the general topic we called is like what aquariums mean to us, and what we talked about several things like how aquariums are used to treat stress, PTSD, and even help as therapeutic things for folks with autism and Alzheimer's, which is really cool. We quoted a few studies and some places that are doing some specific programs. So if you're in for something that's not entirely their usual jam, that might be a little different. Just because I worked with Rob of the main pair there, and I think we spent like 3 weeks talking, trying to figure out exactly how we wanted to do that particular podcast with me showing up. And there was a couple different things we went back and forth on, trying to figure out how to make it entertaining and informational. There's a few studies and stuff that we looked at, and just so we had some relevant scientific data and some interesting stuff like that. So give that a listen if you listen to them naturally. Whenever it comes out, I'll put something on the community tab just to give folks a link to it, because they don't do stuff on YouTube because they don't filter their conversation. YouTube is not letting that stuff happen. So but they have their own website. It's really easy. It has a built-in embedded player. Like I was actually listening to one of their shows while I was at work today. It was kind of a topical reference to see if I thought that style of particular show, which is like kind of a story time, if you will, would interest me in going back to like tell some aquarium stories or something like that. And who knows? We'll see how that rolls. But now that we're here, just hi to everybody. I will warn you for 5 to 10 minutes. I don't know how long I'm going to talk about this. Will be a little emotional for those of you who knew Terry Lindsay, which, as the stream is titled, "This is for him." He passed away last Saturday, and we lost a good one. You can see I'm already messed up. Candy put it perfectly. He is one of the nicest people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And for those who might not know Terry, this is Terry with Ran DeSantis, aka Friday Fish Facts. I just horribly said that. I think I said Ran and not Ron. You gotta laugh when you do dumb stuff, right? But Ron and Terry were not only friends, they worked together, and Ron and I talk pretty regularly through some secret channels. I won't say what, because I don't want people to think like, let's just message Bentley there, please. But yeah, Ron and I talk pretty regularly, and he was keeping me kind of up to date with what was going on with Terry. So the short story is a little while back. I think it was late June. Terry had a heart attack, and It was pretty bad, but he recovered at first and was going to have to go through surgery to do some bypass to have some long-term health. And then kind of out of nowhere, he had a series of strokes. So he had to stay in the hospital while they were waiting for him to get stabilized enough to do surgery. And he was going to have to go through some cognitive therapy to help him regain speech. Which, for those who aren't familiar, like, strokes can do all sorts of crazy stuff to your body. And one of the things that is very, very common with people who have a severe stroke or multiple strokes is it kind of temporarily damages your cognitive centers and makes it so that you have to basically relearn how to talk. And it's not usually it's not a crazy long process. We're not talking years and years, like as in you completely forget what speech is, but it's basically having to retrain your brain to get back to speaking correctly. And I've seen this with some friends of my family in the past. It's tough to deal with. And the biggest problem might have been because of human malware. Barely anybody could really visit Terry while he was in the hospital. They were limiting one guest at a time. They could only stay for so long. And you can understand, he's an older gentleman, so they have to do that to be safe. And it's all sorts of protocols for all the different people that are in that hospital, stuff like that. Well, last Saturday, kind of waiting to go on the road for recovery, Terry had another heart attack and passed. And probably my deepest regret is I had been waiting for him to go through his therapy to get his speech and cognition of speech back. As one second. One thing that was asked of me as a favor by my good friend Ron was to, when the time was right, give Terry a shout out. And we never got there. Now, Terry has, I think he's been around since pre 500 subscribers for this channel. And most of my interaction with him was through stream chats. He's probably the kindest guy you could have ever met. There's actually, I was going through his Facebook right after he passed, and there was a post there from Bob Steenfot. And a quote that he put up. There was something Terry had said to him, which is, "Just want you to be successful beyond your dreams." I have never seen, for Terry in particular, anything that ever spoke ill of him. Everything I've seen, he was always that person who, while in a professional environment, he'd be a kind of strict boss. He was always that person that wanted to push his fellow people higher and higher over himself. Through kindness and inspiration, he helped anyone he could. And it's not so much, me, I have a friendship with him and I haven't been able to talk to him for months, but it's more that times like this remind you that every moment you have with someone around you, whether it's a friend or family, is very precious. So it's kind of a a crazy reminder in a way that you never want to regret. We lost a good one, guys. And so many people won't get to know Terry because he wasn't a YouTube creator, but he was probably one of the greatest supporters of many members of the Fish fam out there, period. Absolutely, absolutely fantastic person who had a lot like some of the other people who were in chat. Susan, for example, who I view Susan kind of like the secret aunt I always wish I had. As just people with a ton of love in their hearts. So, that's it. Like I said, this one's going to be a little weird, guys. It'll take me a few minutes to get back to not screwing up my stream, trying to fix stuff. You guys are going to see the screen just like wig out in a second, which is kind of funny. Control. You must have control, right? So, with that being said, it's, I didn't get to do it while he was still around, so I wanted to do it today. Because a wonderful person has gone from this world. So, we'll take a few seconds. Now that I feel, like a complete wreck, we'll go to what we usually do. The rest of the stream is just gonna be pretty open. If you guys have questions, whether they're about fish or whatever, feel free to ask them. Of course, at Bentley Pasco makes it easy to see them. My dog is barking her brains out in the background. Yeah, I hope that whenever things allow it, that his family has some form of celebration of life, or if the Vancouver, because he was in the Vancouver area of Canada, if the Vancouver Aquarium Society does anything. I can't remember whether or not he was an active member. I know that he did a lot with, like, Ron, right? They were fellow fish friends among being coworkers, but if something's done, I'll be there. Just plain and simple. Assuming I'm invited, that is. You never know. Sometimes you want to do that only with close family. I lost a cousin last year, and his 2 years ago. Jeez, man, time flies. It's so hard to pay attention to time with all this stupid human malware junk. But we had a celebration of life, and it was really, really open. But I've had other ones that were, despite me being good friends of those people, it was only for family. So, you respect those kind of things, right? You never want to intrude on how people are choosing to cope with loss. So, like I said, if you guys have questions, shoot them. Thank you for all the kind words in chat. Like, I definitely don't have the strongest bond. Like, I feel the worst for some of the people like Ron, who, like, he worked with him side by side, and he was covering a lot of Terry's work while Terry was trying to go through recovery. So, those are the people who were impacted the hardest. But we'll try to reassemble and be vaguely professional. I worked in radio once. I'm supposed to be professional. I'm not, but that's why I don't work in radio currently. I'm not a professional. And we'll go to kind of freeform chat. Like, what else can I say that's not gonna like make me blubber like an idiot for a little bit? Any of you guys watch? I'm gonna try to keep this fish related. Did any of you guys watch the kind of final tour of Corey's fish room before he goes to the new home that he's moving into? I actually watched that in full while at work. Well, watched is not really appropriate. I listened mostly and occasionally glanced over while I was doing a ton of reporting and trying to debug stuff at work, which I work in tech. For those who may have missed that, maybe you're new for some reason and you came to see the fat guy crying his brains out. But um, can I just say that, like, in watching that, I was it's really cool to hear, because like I've listened mostly to it, right, but you can hear the audible excitement about the new project and moving to the new fish room that is going to get built. Uh, and that was something kind of was cool to hear in Corey, right? Because Corey, I think a while back he'd mentioned that he was kind of trying to refine his passion. I mean, this is like over a year ago now, I think, maybe even longer. I'm sure Candy could probably better quote that for me. But yeah, it's so good when you get to hear that, like, excitement in someone's voice, especially with, for those of us in this crazy niche hobby, right? Like, we're talking about a hobby that, especially in North America, so few people do. And it's always like, it's fun to hear that, like, that little kid that's in people, right? When they start talking about their next project, or that next fish tank, or that next fish, whatever it may be. It's always like, it's weird that it gets me just as jazzed to hear that kind of excitement in people's voice. So hopefully you guys watch that. If for those who are fans of Aquarium Co-op, I know some people aren't. That's cool. Respect it. I can understand. You got your taste. For some reason, you listen to me. I appreciate it. You're spending your hard-earned time listening to me babble on about somebody you might not even know. But yeah, we actually have some questions or some comments in chat that I'll get. So other than a lot of people who had watched the tour or just sending general condolences, thank you so much. So Caswell, I just noticed that really fancy mic. It's actually not that fancy. So this is just a Blue Yeti. Blue is the brand, Yeti is the type. I've had this, I think, 2 years now. I originally was doing voiceover recording with it for some of my earlier videos where you don't, like, see me on camera as much, and I did voiceovers. Forgive me, I can feel my nose being a pain. And the biggest problem with this particular mic is, well, one, like, the great part about it is it's cheap. It's not very expensive. In the world of microphones, I think they're like $95. I got it when it went on sale around the holidays. And I think I paid like $74 because it was a color that doesn't sell very well. I purposely picked the cheapest one because I was on a bit of a budget back then. Which I still on a budget, but I have a better budget with my current job than I did back then. So no, I've had it for a bit. It's just I only really use it for live streaming because you can hear a lot more in the background. Like, if you pay attention, if I go quiet, you'll hear the fish tank and you might hear some airflow, or you hear Papa Limo when he is being loud. And yeah, so I would actually, like, if you wanted a good microphone for live streaming, this is okay. I think there are better options that are cheaper. Or you can get really nice options. It's all about how you do stuff. If you set it up correctly, there are way better microphones than this because it picks up from so many directions in the mic. Like, it'll pick up all the way back here. And really what you want is you want it to pick it up like a shotgun style mic in just one spot, so you can eliminate background noise much easier without having to do, like, any kind of sound deadening or weird post-processing stuff. And this is probably more technical than it needs to be. But basically, I've had the mic for a bit. I just only use it for streaming now, but I used to use it for doing voiceover. So you go back to my old really bad videos on, like, my old cell phone when they have voiceovers. That's all done with this microphone. For a while, it was done with this headset here. So you can get the really bad audio is on this headset. And then it moved to this microphone when I could finally afford it. So I knocked up my X water cup into the shot. But yeah, there's gating too, but it's not specifically noise gating. It's more the fact that it's an omnidirectional microphone as opposed to something like a shotgun pattern, and you can only control because it's a cardioid mic, so you can get into a lot of technicals about mics. Basically put, it's a good, inexpensive starter mic, but there are probably better ones. This was just the one that I found like at the right time at the right price, and I knew is an easy USB connection straight to my computer as opposed to any of the other connections. Okay. Woo! Let's scroll back. I know there was another question I want to get. Oh, from Holly at Bentley. I lost my best friend of over 30 years last year of cancer. She was raising her 3 grandkids. We had the most beautiful celebration of life for her. I could feel her joy. Wow, that's both horrible and wonderful. Like, my mom actually recently beat breast cancer for now. Like, cancer is kind of an eternal battle, right? I think she's a year out now, so I can relate to the struggle that is that fight, and one of her best friends is fighting cancer right now. It's a scary thing, because when you're friends with the family who you've known for long periods of time, like I've known her friend for 20 years now, right? Like I there was a time when her friend and my mom were like secretly trying to get me and her friend's daughter to date, because we're both about the same age, because both of us were single at the time. They're like best buds, partners in crime, and they were like trying to hook us up. It was a very adorable mom moment, but yeah. Silly stuff you remember, right? But it's good that the celebration of life was wonderful. It's good when they feel good. Like when I lost my cousin, his celebration of life was a really nice thing to go to, because you got to hear so many people say such wonderful things about him. Real quick, just because we had a couple new members, I have to we had EJ Fishes, 76. Thanks, man. You've been around the channel for a long time, so thanks for the membership. I appreciate it. Welcome to Auto Synkless. And then Rico Stan, you've also been around for quite a bit. I've seen you comment quite a few times, so it's cool to see you, and you've been in chat quite a few times, so thanks, man. I appreciate it. Welcome to the emotes. Don't forget, you get the sweet emotes. I love these things, so there's more coming. Specifically, for those that care, there will be one of Papalimo. Might be 2 Papalimo. And then I'm trying to figure out another one. I think I'm going to do one for Bob the Sponge, which I got to do an update on Bob the Sponge here soon. SpongeBob has had some rough times, but is trucking, surprisingly. I found a new young Bob somewhere that I didn't expect, and I thought I had lost Bob. So SpongeBob is strong. Won't give up the ghost. Richard Costa, I got a question. My mid-ground substrate is overrun with green algae, destroying my Monte Carlo and my Cryptparva. No algae anywhere else in the tank. I don't know what to do. So the first thing is going to be, what kind of algae is it? Are we talking like cyanobacteria, like a slime algae, like blue-green algae, or is it like proper hair algae? And there's kind of 2 types of hair algae. There's your darker green hair algae, and there's that like almost that doesn't feel how do I put this? It feels more wiry. And then there's the stuff that just feels like proper string algae. And then there's like really light green hair algae that has a almost slimy feel to it. And it moves really well in the flow, where like most hair algae don't move all that much, but you can see it like waving like this, right? Almost like silk fabric in the wind. Ooh, we're describing stuff fun. So depending on which of the versions of algae it is, just shoot me that message in chat, and I'll properly answer that, because you take a different approach depending on the type of algae. The easiest, like the starter method, is try to remove as much of it as you can by hand, and then we have to adjust one of three things. We either have to adjust our light, our feeding, or uh, our plant load. Because if we're potentially putting too much of some nutrient in the water and the plants aren't absorbing enough of it, that's where the algae is taking over. But usually it is either light or excessive phosphates from food. So let me know which type algae it is, and we can like kind of dial this bad boy in. The fishy mailman. Hey, what's up, buddy? We've known each other through our good friend Joel's stream. I'm super excited for the move for them. Might be moving in the near future as well, so I can relate to the well water pond aspect of move for them. Cool. Well, hopefully your move goes well. Moves can be both a nightmare when you're a fish keeper and super exciting at the same time. In my case, I don't think I'd ever want to move just because I have a lot of largish tanks, and moving those is like such a pain in the butt. It's such a pain. Susan from SLC Aquatics. What's up, Susan? It's good to see you. My laptop blue screen and rebooted tonight. OBS said it overloaded. Look at my stream. So I'm pushing it to do more than the cup can handle. External monitor, 64-bit SSHD. The big thing that's most likely is that it's a little processor and RAM intensive for OBS. It's not that intensive, but when you're live streaming, that's the thing that it actually puts the most stress on. So depending on what the error code is, which there's ways to look it up, but it might be harder now. If you know how to do it on the fly, it's easier. But there's a potential that we could chat, and I might be able to help you with some of that stuff, Susan, if you just shoot me an email, which I'm sure Candy will put that in chat, but I'll do it anyway because I'm behind on chat and I don't care. That's bentleypasco@gmail.com, and there's a dot, so bentley.pasco@gmail.com. You guys can basically email me kind of whenever. HC Aqua was mentioning that he has a Blue Yeti in the carts now, still on the fence. So I will say this, if you can find a deal on a shotgun style mic, so like an example would be, I will eventually be changing this out to either my one. I have two different Rode mics that I've gotten over time. One is the Rode Video Micro, which is the little bitty one. It's really great for putting on cameras, and if you do it correctly, you can get extremely good audio out of that with almost no background noise. It's all about setting it up like as a fake boom mic kind of overhead, and you can do that pretty cheaply with some with like a C-stand. Or there's the Rode Video Mic NTG, which is basically the middle ground between all their other video mics and their proper NTG series, which is like proper hardcore shotgun mics. That thing's freaking amazing, and it uses USB-C as a connection, so you can just USB it straight to your computer. And it's really, really fine-tuned for its directionalness, so you can get really good audio out of it, but it is a little more expensive than something like the Yeti. But there's some newer stuff that's come out, USB-oriented mics, that are really, really good and not very expensive in the grand scheme of things compared to like your Shure SM7Bs, which a lot of people use, and those are like $500 microphones and nonsense like that. Or, you know, the stuff that we used to use in the radio industry where you're like legitimately spending $5,000 to $10,000 a microphone, right? Nobody wants to go that crazy. But there's some good options out there. If you ever, Jesse, if you ever really want to talk microphone stuff, feel free to shoot me an email. I'd be happy to give you some advice on a couple of options to look at, and then just kind of play your waiting game and wait for the right sale, and you can usually catch them a little bit cheaper than they normally are advertised. Ooh, big jump. Catch up, man. do. So Caswell, if you're asking specifically about microphones, just shoot me an email. I don't want to like go into too long a conversation on microphones. The big thing is like there's important details, and I don't want to overly audio nerd out on the fish channel. I have probably too much already, but um, yeah, that's shoot me an email. I'll gladly give you some suggestions. Candy, don't cry. Don't cry, Candy. Don't do it. I did enough as is. I cried enough for all of us. So Dakota Brown, if you had to run a planted tank with an under gravel filter, I know what UGF means. What substrate would you use? Ooh, that is tricky. That's tricky. So here's the problem with under gravel filtration and like your aqua soil type stuff is that you need it to be coarse enough so that things can get down properly into the substrate, but you don't want to get too much gunk down in there. I would look at how would I do that? I'm trying to think because I've never legitimately thought about trying to do planted under gravel filtration. I actually like there is a whisper really back here in the like the psychotic tester side of my brain that is like we should figure out how to do that right. But I don't know how efficient it will be. So what I would probably look at is one of the coarser grained aqua soils, which is going to be slightly harder to plant in. But my worry is you've got your slots, right? And you can only get so much down there. So what I would do is I would look at a reasonable coarse grain gravel to go over the very top of the slats, right? For your little plates for your undergravel filter. And then I would cap it with like I would never use something like the powder type, but you could use something like Eco Complete, Brightwell's Rio Escuro, the largest size. There's like 3 different sizes. You use the largest size, which is the one that comes in the biggest bag anyway, so that makes it easy. Which I think is M. I think it's M. I'd have to look up. But you could also use Fluval Stratum if you wanted that. If it's kind of depending on what you want to do as far as how fast you want to get that tank up and running, whether or not you want to have ammonia coming out of the substrate, or how cheap you're trying to go. But basically, I would not look at dirt. I would not use something like any kind of sand. So even including like the fluorite sand, it's too fine. That's just going to get in there and ruin everything. You need something kind of coarse as a base layer over the top of the slats for the filtration to make sure that that gap stays there. And then you would basically cap with whatever aqua soil you're trying to do. And you could use a slightly finer gravel, like a kind of river pebble style gravel, or even like slightly finer than say pea gravel for certain. You don't want something quite that coarse, so that you can do a thinner layer and then cap with your appropriate aqua soil. You want to make sure that that entire layer of substrate, including that basically protective layer over the slats, isn't too thick, because if it's too thick, now you run the risk of ruining the undergravel filtration and not getting enough suction from everything that's going on there. So it's kind of a conundrum. You could do just generically a finer grain gravel entirely, and then know that you need to root tab every once in a while down in the gravel to help supply those plants, or get only plants that feed from the water column, and then make sure you got good water column fertilization. There's a couple approaches. It just depends on what you're trying to plant. And if you really want to go into some super details, again, feel free to email me. I'd be happy to give you a little more extra advice. But yeah, Dakota, you got a strong one there. Undergravel filtration, but trying to use like a proper planted tank. That's a challenge in itself, but it's doable. So, yeah. Definitely give it a shot. I want to know if you do, when you do get this set up, let me know like 3 months down the road from when you get the tank set up and going, how it's doing. And if you have disasters early on, feel free to message me. Fish Tank Barn, what's up, Mike? I lost a cousin a few years ago. Only in my family would they play rock music in a Baptist church. Took him to the cemetery through Flint with a sidecar on his motorcycle. That's kind of cool. I won't lie. I know that in the case of like one of my cousins, my cousin Henry, for example, the one you guys have seen in the Petco Horror Stories videos, which we are going to try and do another one. It's just getting schedules to align as he works in HR for a company and has been crazy busy through the pandemic. But he's a huge AC/DC fan, and I'm pretty sure if something like down the road, whenever that time comes, if AC/DC was not played at his, I'm pretty sure deep down he'd come back and haunt me or something. So I can understand. I can relate. Oh, okay, Richard Costa. Let's get back to yours. So it's a green spot hair. It grabs like cyanobacteria. Ooh. Ooh. So, okay, I think I kind of know what you're talking about. Spot algae in the substrate is such a pain to deal with, but you can. The typically what happens is there's too much light in that particular area and not enough like either A shade or B plant coverage. So typically what we're seeing is usually a slight amount of overfeeding and if you're doing it right, overfeeding just doesn't matter. A great example would be some of the stuff that Corey talked about in his tour. So what I would suggest, like, as a way to start fighting this is, one, remove as much as you can where you can for the hair parts. And I know that's going to be tough because when it sticks to substrate, it's such a pain in the butt. But what I would do is try to remove as much as you can without losing a lot of substrate. And then we want to adjust both your light and your feeding at the same time. We're going to hit it both 2 of the 3 angles, right? So example, if your lights are on 8 hours a day, we're going to cut that back to 6. And we could even cut it all the way back to 4, but I would say start with 6. Now, if you have lights that are on a spectrum where you can control the intensity, we want to dial the intensity down. And you can kind of do both. You can dial intensity down and take the photo period down, or how long the lights are on. That's a good way to start. Second, if you're feeding your fish every day, feed your fish every other day. Your fish will be fine, trust me. Fish, actually, like giving them fasting days, especially if you train them to know that every once in a while they're going to go a day or 2 without food, and that's okay. It's good for the long-term health of your fish for multiple reasons. But more importantly, if you decide to go for like a weekend vacation or something like that, they can handle not being fed for 2 to 3 days. But if you have like any semi-aggressive fish and they're used to eating every single day, and then all of a sudden they don't eat for a few days, that's when you have the risk of them trying to eat other fish in the tank, or beat up fish in the tank. Whereas if you have them regularly having kind of like a fast day, or even 2 days of fasting, it kind of trains them to go like, no, it's okay if I don't get food for a day or 2. Food will come, and I'll be okay. It just kind of tricks the fish, basically. So what I would do is cut back on your feeding a little bit, cut back on your light some, and then just kind of observe. Probably 2 weeks worth of time is about how long it's going to take to really see measurable results. And if you are seeing measurable results, then the first thing we do is we keep the feeding lighter, and we increase the light period. And if we go back to say like we cut it from 8 to 6, we go back to 8 hours, and now we're not seeing any more algae growth, then we know that overfeeding was our problem. If the second we kick the light back on and that algae starts coming back, light is our issue. We need to address how we're doing our lighting long term. And depending on what light you have and how long you're running it, all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of little things we can tweak. There's also ways that you can use like small amounts of either floating plants or some kind of larger, taller plant to shade that area to limit the amount of light getting there, but not ruining the plants. Because like Crypt Parva can really take relatively low amounts of light and still do very well as a carpet. Monte Carlo, a little less. It likes a lot of light. And algae in Monte Carlo is a little weird, so that might be something where we want to actually look at kind of the natural cleaning crew we're using inside the tank to get something that's going to help prevent stuff from settling. Because one of the things that also can be settling is detritus is settling in that area, and it's feeding that algae, and we're not getting it clean enough. So there might be some maintenance stuff that we could look at too. But let's try with the light and feeding first, and then if that's not giving us some success, shoot me an email and we'll dial it in and get it figured out. Mickey M. Hi, Bentley and everyone. So sorry to hear about Terry passing. I bet he would have some nice words about you. Never forget. Yeah, I mean, I never forgetting the people you lost. I have this philosophy, and a lot of people have said this. It's not like it's something unique to me, but it's that the people we love and care about, they never truly go away because they live on in the way that you conduct yourself. Because the people that have the most influence on your life, they usually influence some way that you interact with the rest of the world, and as long as you continue to do that kind of in their honor, they're not really ever gone. It's a kind of a weird remembrance philosophical thing that I heard something along those lines. I remember when I was a lot younger, like high school, and it's just always stuck with me. Through losing members of your family, and you just kind of honor the way that they taught you to be a good person. Hopefully they taught you to be a good person, not to be a jerk. But yeah, that's thanks, man. I appreciate it. Gorsim, do plants need a minimum par level of light to thrive? Can you make up for lower levels of light by longer exposure? I.e., is light exposure cumulative? 35 watts for 2 hours is the same as 70 watts for 1 hour. So this is actually a really cool question, which, by the way, thank you for recently becoming a Patreon. So, yes and no. Certain plants do significantly better with longer photo periods of lower light. An example would be like sword plants, crypts. A lot of your heavy root feeders tend to actually do far better. Moss is another actual example here of lower light but longer photo periods. But then other plants, like your really fine-leafed plants, Rotala Rotala Wallichii, which is the one that looks like it's spelled Walla Chili. That's the way that, like, whenever I looked at it, it's how my brain would always try to read it, and then I would have to, like, let the plant nerd inside of me be like, no, don't pronounce it like a dummy. Those super fine-leaf plants, the intensity matters significantly more than the photo period. So basically the symbol rule to have in your head is anything with a very fine leaf, intensity matters more than exposure. Anything with bigger, broader leaves, like most of your low light plants, exposure matters more than intensity. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. In some cases, yes, exposure is just better. In other cases, no, longer exposure doesn't help you if there's not enough intensity in the first place. And also, if you're running, say, like CO2, you actually need slightly more powerful light, and exposure can help a little, but not as much as the more powerful light. The shorter exposure with CO2 and slightly stronger light is actually more beneficial because it gets a more significantly powerful photosynthetic period out of the plants, so they just absorb more nutrients, do more photosynthesis more effectively while that CO2 is present, rather than having lots of CO2 in the water for a really long time. Richard, it has to be the light. I've recently added another light. All my other plants are looking good. Just the front corner. So yeah, what I would try to do is if you can dial that light down some, whether it has some dimming options like the fluval where you can control it, or even just the period it's on, because if you have extra lights, you could have that one light only on for, say, like 4 hours for just one really bright, intense period, and then have it come off, but have the other lights on if you have appropriate timers to control that. And that might be a really good approach to take. Tom Patterson, double metal stands, will the bottom light affect root growth on a top tank? So, light typically is absorbed at the leaf level and not at the root level. Root level really only cares about absorbing nutrients. So it shouldn't. The risk could be potentially that the light underneath could cause pockets of algae to begin forming inside the substrate, and certain algae inside the substrate will basically bind it all together almost like a glue, and causes your substrate to become kind of like a hard layer, and that can actually make it hard for your roots to grow and expand because it's really, really hard to push through some of those portions if it gets really, really prolific. So, actually, a really cool question to think about, too. I like that question a lot. The Fishy Mailman, new member. What's up, buddy? Thanks, man. Thanks for becoming an autosynclist. I've got to find out a proper name for, like, Corey has the team, and, everybody else got their thing. I probably have to figure out some name. I don't know. We could go, like, real crazy and be like the Church of Rainbow or something dumb, but I'm like, not hyper-religious, so who knows. I'll figure something out, though. We'll figure it out. I mean, it's a lot of Rainbow Fish theme stuff in there, but at the same time, like, I just like autosyncless. I had to have autosyncless as a level because I love those things. I have them in every tank, and I actually, because of COVID, don't have enough anymore. Like, I wanted to buy, like, 60 of them, but I couldn't. They're impossible to get in stock. It's been killing me. Stephen P. Can spot algae be removed from leaves by hand, or is there no way to get rid of it other than cutting the leaf? So, if you get to it early enough, you could use something like a cheap toothbrush, like a dollar store toothbrush, right? And you can use that to lightly abrade the algae off of the top of the leaf. That's usually the best way, but if it's on there really solid and that small amount of abrasion isn't enough to get it off, then you're probably in the realm of cut the leaf, or snails. Snails will eventually get that stuff off. Shrimp can too in a really high population level, but snails are significantly better at doing it, especially like ram's horn snails. I wouldn't trust Malaysian trumpet snails so much because they spend so much time down in the substrate and on smooth surfaces. They don't really get on the plants as much, but you're like pond snails and ram's horn snails are actually really, really good at getting that stuff off. So are nereids. If you can, if like the little white eggs that never hatch from nereids don't drive you crazy all over the place, which they do for me, so I don't keep nereids. Or at least not anymore. I had some, and they drove me nuts. Chewy, it is not always microphone pros use audio soundboards. Oh, it's not always the microphone pros use audio soundboards. So, specifically what you're actually talking about is like a mixer, a preamp condenser. I mean, like, I worked in radio, right? I know all this gear. The thing is, there are calibers of microphone that will get you significantly better audio than, say, a cheap headset or even a good gaming headset. Because good gaming headsets have okay microphones, but they're still not great microphones. And the difference between a reasonable, like, cardioid microphone like this and a gaming headset is night and day if you get it all tuned properly, right? Like, you don't push the gain really, really high so that it hears everything under the sun around you, and you're speaking too quietly, so it has to work too hard to pick stuff up. You have to be kind of loud. Yeah, but when you get into super pro level audio, yes, you're talking about several pieces of equipment between you, the person, your microphone, and whatever the final processing unit is, which is usually your computer, right? There's usually one or two pieces of hardware in the middle, and if you're going like super pro level, there's like 4 or 5 that are helping to do all sorts of specific things to the audio to get it this really nice, clean, specific sound you're after, which usually, for most people, is increasing the bass in your voice. So instead of sounding like Bentley's normal speaking voice, you can get that wonderful, deep radio-style voice, a little deeper, more baritone, right? You do those kind of things. It's tricks, and also, like, you really go hard, like hardcore in radio. You learn how to mess with your voice and do all sorts of crazy nonsense. But I'm not at that level to even remotely worry about that, and I'm not that crazy an audiophile yet, because I don't want that much equipment until I have a better space. Whee! Whoa, jeez. Chad jumped on me again. I was trying to read something from the Fishy Mailman. Jumped. Holy moly. army of questions I gotta get to. I better speed up. We're getting close to the end. I gotta speed up. Year out of the move, no tanks going in, all the fish would be rehomed with the exception. Oh, so you're doing a big move. Woo! That's rough. That's rough. It's always rough when you got to rehome all your fish, but, you know, sometimes it's fun because then you get the fun of, like, I'm getting new fish, like, several times in a row, right? Paratree Aquatics, Fluval just released Pro Mode on the Aqua Sky. Is it worth running on a low-tech 29-gallon? Thanks in advance. You know, the Aqua Sky has a different purpose. If you're going for a heavily planted tank, I would get the smaller, because 29s are just tall enough to where I would get just the appropriate size Fluval 3.0 plant. If you're doing light planting or you don't need stronger light, then I think the Aqua Sky is just fine. You just have to, there's some adjustments in light you have to do. I'm still trying to work with Fluval to like sneakily get an Aqua Sky out of them so that I can like play with it enough in their pro modes to create a pro mode setting for it. Which I think I can make that happen. It's just, you know, not pestering them too much. It's pestering them the right amount. Tony Dickerson, have a bladder snail problem. Are assassin snails a good solution? The easiest solution to snails is to significantly cut down their food supply. However, if you like assassin snails and you want to breed them for a while and you've got a local store that will buy them back from you, then yes, they're a really awesome idea because you can get them breeding, take all the babies in, and basically get them to pay for themselves. And then as the number of pond snails that are there for them to kill are kind of gone and you start worrying about them fighting each other, you can just kind of offload them or move them to other tanks that might have snail issues. Me personally, I don't really think any snails are a problem. Eventually, you can nip it in the bud by just like lowering the amount of food you put in the tank, and when they have less food, they kind of naturally die off because there's not enough food for them. But if it's really bothering you, yeah, assassin snails are really, really effective at killing pond snails. All right, there's some comments I'm gonna skip, even though, like, trust me, I'm reading them, like HC Aqua, but I'm gonna try and get questions, like, slammed down. So, Caswell, any idea why when I make a video on my phone it looks great, but then, that's YouTube's compression. And if you're not doing, some form of video render, like actual software to video render it properly, the difference between what it's designed to do on your phone and how it upscales to a proper large screen, and then once it hits YouTube's compression, it can do all sorts of wonky stuff to things. Green Grove Aquatics. How much protein should young bristlenose plecos have in their diet? Okay, so this is actually a cool question, and I have a reasonable answer to this. If you are looking to get a lot of size on young bristlenoses really fast, then having more protein in their diet is really, really beneficial. And an easy way to do this is, like, if you're doing Repashy food, for example, mix a small amount of either the Spawn and Grow or the Community Plus. I suggest the Spawn and Grow because it has a higher protein content in with, like, either your Soylent Green or your Bottom Scratcher, whichever one you're doing. That will help speed their growth. Now, in the end, I would say that most bristlenoses really want a heavy veg diet, and some of the best ways that you can get them to grow fast without worrying about too much protein is just by having really good food sources. So, Repashy Soylent Green is a great example as a staple food for bristles, and then, your zucchinis, your squashes, all that kind of stuff are all really, really great. Green beans are fine, but if you do just green beans, you're not going to see great growth, right? They do need some level of protein, and that can even come in the form of, like, feeding some kind of frozen food and having it there for them to feed on afterward if there's not a bunch of fish above that are just going to annihilate that before they even have a chance. I would say the right amount of protein is having kind of like a once every 3 days, where I actually am trying to put every 3 feedings might be more accurate, where I'm trying to put protein into their diet. So if I was feeding, say, Repashy 3 days a week, right, then one of those 3 days, I would do a mixture that was like half Spawn and Grow and half Soylent Green, or even 25% Spawn and Grow and the rest all Soylent Green, to just boost that little bit in there. And you could put just a small amount, like 10% of Spawn and Grow, or even Bottom Scratcher, because they are higher protein levels, into each of your like Repashy mixtures if you do use Repashy, and just that little boost of protein can be enough. As far as beyond that, like trying to put in like pellets or something like that, just mix it in every once in a while. Every couple of days, mix in a little bit of extra protein. You'll see some good results. But realistically, just having kind of a readily available food source, because they kind of constantly try to eat, make sure that you're feeding them enough. Plecos eat a lot and will eat a ton if you let them. So if you really want to see good growth and a healthy pleco, especially any of your ancestris, your veg eating plecos, just make sure they get plenty of food and you'll be fine. I have some ancestris I'm working with that members have seen as a preview. You guys will get to see soon. They're super cool. And I've been feeding them a ton of Repashy and a bunch of zucchini, and they have been going hog wild on it. Which, for how small they are, hog wild is pretty impressive. I'm surprised at how fast they can go through it. Texas Fish, I just added a mix of 75% soil and 25% safety Zorb. It's capped with 2 to 3 inches of sand as an experiment. I would love to hear your results. That sounds really cool. Patrick's Aquatics, welcome to Auto Sinkless, man. Thanks for becoming a member. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to find questions. We're again, just for the last few minutes, you got Dr. Black is going on here soon. I don't want to cut in his stream too much, but if the last couple questions, do at Bentley Pasco. I'll try to get a few more in here. I'll like speed through them, go the lightning round, and the less like Bentley talking too much around. Dragon Lair. Actually, I really want to mention this comment that he has. 40 years ago, I grew treated planted aquariums with just medium grade gravel, 2 to 3 inches deep, over under gravel filters. We talked about under gravel filters before. So there you go. A medium grade gravel is really all you need. But I would look at water column feeders primarily there. They don't try to do like crypts and swords this way. They'll get really, really angry. But like stems and epiphyte plants and all that kind of stuff, they can do really, really well in that kind of setup. By the way, Candy, thanks for being as awesome as you are. I'm just going to put that out there. I know everybody gives Candy love, but you truly are the most supreme of all mods. Holly Gibbs. My friend Carrie played on a dart team, and through the years we were introduced to Pantera, hence members of the band and Pantera music at her celebration. That's a strong celebration if you're doing some Pantera. That's appreciated. My cousin was a big country music fan, owned a country music bar, and thus there was much country being played at his, which I'm kind of more of a rock and jazz guy, and a little bit of like older pop and like 90s and early to late 80s and early 90s rap, just because that's what I grew up with, right? So it was a struggle to get into the country mode, but some country's at my alley, 'cause for a while I was like force-fed country by my dad. Gizmo Timo. Man, I hope I pronounced that one right. Hi, Bentley. I have a question. I'm starting a 55 with sand substrate. Thoughts? Plants are Crypts, Vals, and Nubius. Make sure you have a coarse grain sand and that it's not too thick a layer, or it will compact and it will really struggle for a couple of those plants, like Crypts and Vals especially. It can compact their root structure and make it very, very hard for them to go further. Stephen P. Would Kumbaba count as a fine leaf? No, because Kumbaba can live through freaking anything. That plant is nigh unkillable. So don't worry too much about that one. There's some exceptions to all the rules. Kelly Foreman. Any tips on Monte Carlo? It's hard to keep rooted in my fluval stratum. A giant mess to trim. All the pros just cheat and dry start it. So a really cool way that I have learned from a professional aquascaper is that they will put down their Monte Carlo when they initially plant, and they'll not fill the water all the way up. And then what they'll do before they start filling water in the aquarium is they will take a thin sheet of glass and lay it over the top as a weight to hold the Monte Carlo in place for the first like 2 weeks. And then they'll start filling the tank, and that glass holds the Monte Carlo in place but allows it to get plenty of light so that it can then build its root structure through the first couple of weeks and grow in, and then you just remove the glass and the Monte Carlo stays in place. Now, the other way that you deal with it is you actually get the Monte Carlo really deep in the substrate and get it held in there so that barely a few leaves are coming out, and let it grow naturally. Monte Carlo, Hydrocardyl tripartita, aka Japan clover, a lot of those like that, they're really, really tough on the initial planting for most of our aqua soils. It kind of takes a very fine grasp of understanding how to make them work, so to speak. But then once you get it down, like it's like some voodoo magic that you learn. Once you've got it down, you got it down, and when you don't, it's the greatest headache ever. One other thing, just to make sure, Kelly, make sure that you have a good amount of calcium in your water. Monte Carlo loves calcium, and if there's not enough, you will never be successful with it. So keep that in mind. If you're seeing your Monte Carlo struggle, dose a little extra calcium. Uh-oh. What is, Adam, what is the optimal maximum amount of nitrate for a heavy planted tank? Trying to dial in my water changes. So in general, what you want to do is try and target between, realistically, I would say try to be in that like 10 to 20 nitrates range at all time, but you can go as far as the 20 to 40. Just make sure you don't go beyond the 20 to 40 range of nitrates. That's when you start having too much in the water. Even with a heavily planted aquarium, it becomes risky to your fish at that point long term. If you can keep it in that range, you're doing it right. When you're piling way over that is when you usually want a water change, assuming you haven't just dosed a bunch of fertilizer that day. Okay, still in the lightning round. Bentley, have you considered starting a Discord server? I have one for members only. Just because I pay a lot of attention to it, so I don't want to like have it go hog wild on me and be hard to manage, because I try to give the people there a lot of attention. But it's, it's not super active because it's a very small community. Purnell, I have Jungle Val and a 55 gallon that stays super short, but I'm just using a cheapo eBay Aquaneat light. Is it just not enough light? It would be growing really, really long if it was struggling to get enough light. So if it's staying pretty short and it's propagating, you're doing fine. Rob! I saw your thing earlier, but I've been trying to catch up on chat. So, Rob's, thanks a lot, you had an absolute blast. Again, I was on the Aquarium Guys podcast last night. I'm not sure when that goes live, but once it is, I will post it to the community tab. We had a really, really fun conversation talking about what aquariums mean to us and like how aquariums are being used for various therapeutic methods, including treating PTSD, Alzheimer's, and children with autism. It was a lot of fun, and we I think afterward we had some chat with the folks that are live on Discord, and we had some important conversation. It was all mostly joking around, but more importantly, stay tuned to the very end, because we talk about the importance of gaseous exchange in a dojo loach. It's very, 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 very important science. Might be a joke. It was fun. Okay, try and catch up here. Brian, $2 super chat as well. Thanks, man. Callie Moisey have arrived. So he got some sweet, sweet rainbows from somebody that I might have ordered some sweet, sweet rainbows from, that members have seen, and fairly soon the rest of you will get to see and understand why I ordered them, because, man, they're cool when they're adults. And that's the beautiful part, is that some of the babies already have some color coming in. It's super exciting, even though they're teeny, teeny, tiny little things. They're like 3/4 of an inch to an inch long. They're little bitty babies. Sci-Fi Swordsman, I saw you on the Aquarium Guys podcast recording last night. I was Pagan Swordsman. Hey, cool. Wanted to ask you about your less than great opinion of a YouTuber. But if you don't want to talk about it, no problem. So I have a policy. I don't like to talk ill of any other creator on YouTube. And let me explain why. In general, we're going to do like, I'm going a little longer than I want to, but we're going to go to one of those philosophical Bentley talks, which we've had a few of them. Part of the reason why is that in general, my goal through YouTube is to be a positive force. And that most of that's through education and just like trying to inspire people to do cool stuff or get them to learn about things a little better. But the big thing is I hate unnecessary drama, and I don't think that you know, my opinions of Dustin are this. The part that I'll talk about is that Dustin in person is actually really, really fun to talk to. I got an opportunity to meet him in person at a really small reef-oriented convention actually out here called ReefWorks. And you know what? Talking with Dustin in person, the man loves his fish. He's very energetic, and he's actually really fun to talk to. Are there things that I don't agree with that he does? Yes, of course. But I can say that about a lot of YouTubers. But the big thing is, I don't want to like talk trash about anybody, because it's not that like I don't want to risk getting into a fight. Like, I'm a really brash human being in the grand scheme of things. I have been forged in the fires of like some of the most jerk communities known to man, which is mostly gamers and especially like the fighting game community when I was younger. Like that doesn't bug me. The thing that is I would rather talk about the positives about people than talk about the negatives, because I think that if we all look at the silver lining more often, we have a better environment overall. Like I always try to look at the best in people. It's a personal policy. It's taken a lot of time, and sometimes it's to my detriment. Sometimes I will make decisions based on what I see as the best in people, and then they might not perform to that best that I would expect, and it can be a detriment to me. And I've had it bite me in the butt more than a few times throughout my life, but it doesn't stop me from doing it, because deep down I want to see the best in people. I'm a happy person. I have a relatively blessed life in the grand scheme of things. I've faced my forms of adversity, do not get me wrong, but I have come out because I'm always looking toward that light at the end of the tunnel, toward that brightness, and not toward the darkness around it. So I would rather continue being that mentality in my actions as well. Now, that being said, if somebody wants to throw stones at me, I will not hesitate to throw back, but I don't think that's going to happen, because like Dustin and I have a very short interaction. I've even ordered plants from him in the past. Like I said, he's actually like a real blast to talk to in person, and I've only met him the once. So what do you do? Like, I want to talk negative about people. Just like even the people that I've had, I've had people talk negative about me, and basically my thing was I talked to them politely and just said, "Hey man, I thought we were chill. I don't want to talk negative about anybody. Can we not have this happen? Because it doesn't help anybody if we just like throw stones at each other." Like, there's been plenty of fights between some of the small YouTubers, some of the big YouTubers. Does it generate views for people? Sure, it probably does. Does it really help anyone? Is it help that person who has a question about their fish, the person who's struggling, the person who, might have had a bad experience with fish? Does having dumb drama help any of those people? No. And I would much rather be a helpful force than a hurtful force. So that's just how I roll. But glad you listened to the podcast live. I hope you enjoyed it. That's the important part. All that I care about is that if I have any influence on anything, that you enjoyed that, or that you learned something. Either of those two. If I did both, man, I feel fantastic. And that means I had a good day. If I did neither, well, just means I'm going to try again the next time. That's me. All right, guys, I'm going to try and make sure I miss any extra questions that are really, really good. Kelly, that should be enough calcium, just as a quick answer to you. Priscilla MK, welcome to Auto Synkless at the tail end. Priscilla, amazing artist. If you guys don't know Priscilla, not only does she work for a really, really cool company, Aquatic Arts, and some fish stores, she does amazing art. Your art that you put up of the Anubias recently, it's very nice. Very, very nice. Anyway, guys, Dr. Black is, I'm sure, live by now because I've gone way over time. But Dr. Black 66 is going live soon if he's not already live. If you want to keep rolling through some Fish Fam stuff, feel free to pipe that way. I'm sure that Candy will give a little linky. And as always, guys, thank you so much Oh, he's having a delayed start. There we go. Oh, you keep him awake till I get back. I can go a little later. All right. I'll make sure I didn't miss a question, because if so, I want to get people's questions. I love doing questions because I'm a weirdo. Chubby Gumpy, hits up, buddy. Hope your blue Moscows are doing fantastic. Have you tried out NVIDIA broadcast software yet? Great audio and video tools for those with NVIDIA graphics cards. I have not, just because I've used OBS for so long and I'm so used to a quick, simple setup in OBS that I haven't had the necessity to go outward, but I do use NVIDIA graphics in my machine, so I might have to give it a little look-see and try and research it some, because if there's something I can do better, easier, that's always an option. But OBS is a great free option. So for people that are looking to save a few bucks, it's usually what I recommend. It's got its flaws, sure, but it's pretty good. Jesse, HC Aqua, have you gotten into any terrarium plants? If you count plants that I have purposely let grow emergent out of my tanks and call them terraria plants, yes. I do have one. I mean, it's technically usually used as a potted plant as a house plant that I have growing out of a tank in kind of a like terrarium style. There's some stuff that I like I like vermilions a lot, but I don't have anything set up yet to do those, and I don't have the room for it right now. In the future, I might try something, because I've gotten to meet the absolutely wonderful Chris Team and watch that guy work and picked his brain a little bit, and he's absolutely fantastic. So, wanting to do something to the vaguest level of close to what he does is super interesting to me. Patrick Aquatics, Dustin has the enthusiasm of a child, and I mean that in a good way. I would agree. Like, he's a super energetic dude, especially if you get to meet him in person. Like, he's a real blast to chill with. But yeah, just personal policies there. Just how I roll, man. I like to keep it more positive. JRBM, or is it Junior BM? Yo, Bentley, I have about 3 inches of stratum with an inch cap of white sand. I just finished my scale with rock and wood. All that is left is plants and water. Do you advise me doing dry start? If you have experience with dry start, go for it. I personally never do a dry start, but I'm not trying to do like a hyper intricate carpet of plants. If you're trying to do like Monte Carlo or Hydrocotyl tripartita, the Japan clover, any of those really fine leaf, like dwarf baby tears, fine carpeting plants, and not like the chain swords or like Liliopsis or hairgrass, then yes, you can get a lot of help from a dry start as far as establishing the root structure. But if you're not trying to do a super fine start like that, if you dry start, you then have to go through a conversion process to get them to convert properly a little. There's a small amount of conversion that has to occur when you flood the aquarium. So just skip that step and let it convert in the first place. Let it be done fully submerged in the first place. Personal opinion, if you have experience with a dry start, though, and you've had really good success with it in the past, dude, dry start it. Go for it. Go nuts. I've seen lots of success with it from fellows in my club. It's just not my jam because I'm lazy. I want my aquarium full of water right away. I love water moving. I can't help it. Caswell, am I the only one that kind of likes green hair algae? The stuff's keeping my blackbeard algae down. Oh man, my girlfriend actually loves the look of blackbeard algae, and she has said that if she ever gets a tank, she just wants it to be wood and blackbeard algae as her aquascape, which is kind of funny to me, but I told her if she really wants to do that at some point, we will do it for her. Jacob Barber, y'all talking about some very large YouTuber? No, not really, but in theory we could. The man has a very, very large channel and does fish that I would never keep because legally I cannot. But I do appreciate stingrays. Oh, man. For all those wishing kind of the about to run away. Thank you so much. Like, again, for those who For those who do have any extra questions, if I didn't get it in the stream, because I'm going to be cutting it here, feel free to email me. Kenny just put it out there. It's bentley.pasco@gmail.com. It does often take me between 3 and 5 days to get back to it, but I will respond. So, yeah. There's that. What says... And one of these days, Candy is going to bust out on YouTube and blow all the other fish tubers away. Yeah, I would love to see Candy properly in videos, but, you know, Candy does what Candy does. She is the Uber mod. I don't know that she has time to YouTube with how much she mods voluntarily. It's like so amazing. Atkins Nature Aquariums. Any tips for Lagonundra meboldi red? Treat it like a crypt, and just give it good flow. Lagonundras actually appreciate a decent amount of flow. All right. If I didn't get your question, shoot me an email, please. I'll be happy to get those back to you. Blake's. I'll answer this one thing for Blake, but I'll do it this way. Have you ever thought of summer tubbing rainbows or dropping in mops? Yes, I have. But the Northwest weather sucks, and to get proper temperature for rainbows is far too rare. You're welcome, Priscilla. I love you. Everybody, thank you so much for joining. Again, for those who were here and listen, if you want to catch the replay and you want to see me cry, feel free. You can see a fat man cry on the internet. It's not that rare. There's plenty of them that do it. But, this is for my good friend Terry Lindsay. We have lost a really, really great fish keeper, and I just hope that the positive influence he was to a lot of us, especially in the creator community, I significantly hope that we can push forward to all the wonderful folks who tune into us and are in our lives. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.